Hey, how's it going guys? It's Nate here, and welcome to the ancient city of Falkreath, one of Skyrim's southernmost hold capitals. The lands of this area are dominated by lush, thick forests and the beautiful Lake Ilinalta coast. Despite offering some of the most breathtaking scenes available in the Elder Scrolls V, Falkreath's role in the events of the game are shockingly minor. Save for being the setting of a couple of side quests, the city nor hold offer much of any narrative significance. Furthermore, a lack of walls or defining architectural characteristics make the settlement virtually indistinguishable from some of Skyrim's other, more generic towns. Nonetheless, while it may have gotten a bit of a developmental cold shoulder by Bethesda, I can assure you there's more to Falkreath than just a pile of buildings or nearby neat hiking trails. And indeed, it's a hub for some of the Elder Scrolls' most fascinating lore, if you're willing to dig beneath the brush. Ladies and gentlemen, today we'll be taking a look at 5 things you probably never knew about the town of Falkreath and the surrounding region in the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. Starting off, the great Delic Empire, which today reigns over much of Tamriel, was actually originally born here in Falkreath. Let me explain. This one's pretty fun. So, when you think of what Skyrim looks like on a map, chances are you think of this image. A large northern kingdom of 9 holds, each administered by a local jarl, and all loyal to a single high king. While this has been true for most of Skyrim's recorded history, over time things did change quite a bit, as various kings either gained or lost territory. Heck, there was even a brief moment when the High King of Skyrim controlled most of neighboring High Rock and even bits of Morrowind. Anyway, in the late Second Era, just before the rise of Tiber Septim, the lore suggests that something happened that caused the region of Skyrim to be incredibly divided. So much so that it seems many of the holds became their own independent kingdoms. The history we're provided by the games is purposely vague here. We're not sure if the Kingdom of Skyrim was entirely dissolved for some reason, and every place it ruled just gained independence, or if maybe it still existed, but there was just no strong central government left to keep things in line. Nonetheless, during this time period, Falkreath too gained independence, and during this period of self-rule, a man named Cuchulainn was crowned King of Falkreath, and he sought to expand his territory. Eventually, as the Second Era came to a close, the king invited a mysterious man, today known as Tiber Septim, may have heard of him, or Talos, to become a general and lead his armies. Talos proved to be insanely skilled, and soon Cuchulainn was able to conquer most of Cyrodiil and even all of Skyrim in the name of Falkreath. With so much land under his belt already, the man decided he wanted more. He wanted to take over all of Tamriel. So in the final days of the Second Era, Cuchulainn crowned himself the Emperor of Tamriel in the recently captured Imperial City, which he decided would become his new capital. And thus, the Third Cyrodiilic Empire, one that still stands today, was founded. Sadly, Emperor Cuchulainn would be killed mere months after his coronation in a mysterious fire that burned down his palace. Left without an heir, General Tiber Septim swept in and declared he would take up the throne next. As you might imagine, there's a lot of internal debate within the community regarding whether or not Cuchulainn's death was a true accident, or really just a power grab by Talos. Alas, General, now Emperor Septim, would go on to fulfill the dream of taking over Tamriel, and building a dynasty that would stand the test of time. And so, the empire we all know and love, that's appeared in just about every single Elder Scrolls game, all had its roots right here, in this raggedy little province. Next on our list, with today's crash course on history over, let's talk a little bit about the place in modern times, and specifically, focus in on one resident who may be receiving some divine signals. Runil is the town's local priest of Arche, and even without examining the interesting supernatural elements to his character that we'll get into, the man's a pretty memorable person. Evidently, decades ago, he was once a powerful battle mage, fighting for the Aldmeri Dominion in their great war against the Empire. But after that conflict, Runil opted to choose a life of peace and pacifism. Now, he openly talks about how much he regrets serving the Thalmor, and all those innocents he wish he didn't hurt. Today, he only desires to spread the word of Arche, and hopefully find some redemption for his past. Well, he offers players a short fetch quest, to recover a journal of his that he recently lost while wandering around a cave, for some reason. If you can go get that book back to him, he promises to pay you handsomely. This mission is again about as generic as fetch quests get. The book spawns in a random dungeon, go get it, clearing out any enemies, and return it for your reward. It's all over then. But, while you have the journal, you can open it up and sneak a peek of its contents, which get rather ominous. Most of the journal entries are boring priest stuff, but in the final paragraph, written on the 20th of Sun's Height, literally just a month before Skyrim begins, Runil talks about strange visions. I'll just read it to you guys. Quote, 20th of Sun's Height, dreams of the war again. But this time something different. I was leading a small band of Aldemari battle mages on a mission deep in the heart of Imperial territory. We had drawn near our target, a supply depot outside of Cheydinhal, when the sky suddenly darkened. A great shadow passed over us, and there was a roar, so terrible it chilled my blood. Something was flying overhead, so huge and so dark as to blot out the sun. The dream then changed. I was here in Falkreath, performing a service for someone who had just passed away, though I don't recall who. From the corner of my eye I saw a stranger approaching. I turned to look, but the shadow came again, and the roar, and then I awoke. Now that I reflect on the dream, I can't help but wonder, was it a dragon? Why would I dream of such a creature when I'd never seen one? It seemed so real at the time, but now the memory is fading. What it means, I cannot say. Probably nothing. End quote. Runil was having dreams about dragons just before the events of the game kicked off. Hey, it's even possible that the stranger may have even been an allusion to us, the Dragonborn. I did quite a bit of research on Runil's entry, and it doesn't appear to connect to any quests or plot lines. It's just a one-off foreshadowment of things to come. What caused Runil specifically to receive these dreams, and no one else, remains a mystery in its own right. Maybe his god Arche was trying to send a warning. Whatever the narrative significance, it's a neat detail by Bethesda. Coming in at number 3, while the residents of this capital may largely seem relatively friendly and neighborly with each other, it would appear that behind the scenes, the town's two biggest businesses, Grey Pine Goods General Store and the Dead Man's Drink Tavern, are locked in a heated and potentially even blood-drawing rivalry. So, the relationship I'm about to describe isn't one ever mentioned in any game dialogue, quests, or notes. No. Instead, everything we know about it comes from tags in Skyrim's game files, and potential Radiant game encounters. Dead Man's Drink is owned by Valga Vincia, who also serves as the primary innkeeper, and manages the place with a woman named Nari, who helps clean and serve drinks. For some reason, in the creation kit, she is flagged as hating Soloff, the owner of Grey Pine Goods, Falkreath store. And not only does he hate her back, but Soloff also has a poor relationship with her employee, Nari. If the player ever kills Soloff or Valga, the other may send you a letter thanking you, and providing some coin too. Likewise, killing Nari can also provoke Soloff to send you the same letter. This is made really weird by the fact that Soloff often goes into the Dead Man's Drink and is served by the girls, without any incident. They look like good friends. Could it be that both business owners are only pretending to like each other, but secretly harboring much hatred? Maybe they feel having the other's business around is hurting their own, and they have pent-up emotions. I guess the only conclusions we can draw from this are to be weary of Falkreath's business community. They're some pretty cutthroat fellows. For a fourth spot, one of the most interesting types of settlements that pepper the lands of Skyrim are orcish strongholds. Small, somewhat fortified communities of orcs, who all live under a chief, and largely exist independent of Skyrim's laws and customs. The High Kings and Jarls all for the most part appear content to just leave them alone, as long as they don't bother anything. Kinda cool. In total, there are 5 strongholds the player can come across during our time in the Elder Scrolls V. But I'm going to argue that that number may actually be 7, as the Falkreath hold looks to be holding 2 unmarked strongholds that the game never points out. Bile Gulch Mine is a large bandit-occupied dungeon on the hold's western border. And take a close look, and you'll notice all of the bandits are orcs. Not only that, the architecture around the place is all orcish. Same for Cracktusk Keep, a supposedly bandit-occupied fort on the south, that too boasts an exclusively orcish population and orcish architecture. These are strongholds, just held by less friendly orcs. After doing quite a bit of digging, it doesn't seem like there are any other places like these two, bandit outposts that are really orcish strongholds. And sadly, there's not much lore that seems to explain their existence. The Falkreath region was supposedly attacked by various orcish tribes in the Second Era, before the rise of Tiber Septim, so maybe those ancient attackers could be the ancestors of the orcs occupying these places? I don't know, seems like a stretch. Whatever's going on here, just know that Falkreath seems to have 2 somewhat hidden settlements. And finally, last on our list, one of the biggest questions Skyrim leaves unanswered is what's the backstory behind the Volca Har vampire clan? Introduced in the Dawnguard DLC, the Volca Har vampires are based out of a castle off of Skyrim's northern coast, led by a man calling himself Lord Harkin. They claim to have been planning to blot out the sun for centuries now, and during the events of the DLC, they finally spring into action. But the game leaves the Volca Har clan's past shockingly unexplained. Harkin claims that in ancient times, he used to be the king of somewhere, who made a deal with some dark Daedric forces to become a vampire, so he could be more powerful and immortal and all that stuff. We know little else, particularly where he was the king of. Well, some suspect that this undead cabal's true origins may have something to do with Falkreath. Oh boy, this is gonna be a long one. One of the few side quests the Dovahkiin can receive while in the hold is called Dark Ancestor. It begins when a man named Dengir of Stun, who just so happens to also be Falkreath's ex-Jarl, who reigned until stepping down for his nephew, admits to the player that he started feeling a bit nervous recently. You see, not too long ago, a grave in the local cemetery was dug up, and the body inside of it has disappeared. Most of the town assumes this is the work of simple petty grave robbers, mere ne'er-do-wells looking to make a quick buck, and nothing more. But Dengir knows the truth is much more frightening, because the grave dug up belonged to an ancient ancestor of his named Vigar, who was a vampire. According to him, sometime hundreds of years ago, Vigar was locked in a coffin and buried down beneath the earth, sealed with a strange magical device called the Ward Stone. Since then, his family, presumably Falkreath's royal family, has been entrusted with protecting that stone and keeping Vigar buried. Unlucky for them, some time ago that Ward Stone went missing, stolen by a thief, and now the grave's dug up with no body. Dengir knows Vigar must have escaped, and will beg the Dragonborn to help us defeat him once and for all. He informs us that the vampire has probably fled to an abandoned castle called Bloodlet Throne, in the frozen southeast of the Hold, where there are rumored to be more vampires. If we can take care of this problem for him, he promises us quite a bit of gold. From here, Dark Ancestor is a pretty normal dungeon crawl. Go to the castle, slay a bunch of vampires, fight Vigar in a boss battle, and return for your reward. Okay, so interesting quest, honestly not really, but how does this connect to the Volca Har clan? Well, before Skyrim ever came out, the Volca Har were surprisingly enough first mentioned in a book from the Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion, titled Immortal Blood, which told the tale of a vampire hunter. In that book, for a brief moment while describing various vampire groups across Tamriel, the Volca Har are quickly brought up, and described as, quote, the most powerful tribe of Skyrim, the Volca Har clan, paranoid and cruel, whose very breath could freeze their victims' blood in its veins. I explained to him how they lived beneath the ice of remote and haunted lakes, never venturing to the world of men except to feed. End quote. Now, this description is nothing like the Volca Har Clan from Skyrim. Indeed, in TES 5, they're more of a generic fantasy caricature of vampires. They don't live under ice or use frost magic or anything like that. But the gang at Bloodlet Throne does fit this description, at least a little better. Indeed, below the castle, much of the dungeon has been carved out from some ancient glacier. Hence, they live beneath the ice, and many of the vamps here use frost magic too. Maybe these folks were who that quote was really describing. If we want to take things a step further, maybe the kingdom once ruled by Lord Harkin was Falkreath, or at the very least, incorporated Bloodlet Throne. The location appears to be incredibly ancient, at least 1,000 years old. Could this have been the place Harkin was once in charge of, until he made his evil pact with the Daedra and moved out to that castle off of Skyrim's shores? The truth is, of course as it so often is with these mysteries, very, very unclear. Whatever happened, I suppose only Lord Harkin knows, and Lord Harkin won't say. And with that, we are going to wrap up. 5 things you probably never knew about the city and hold of Falkreath in the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Which of these fun facts or tiny details did you find to be the most intriguing? And what Skyrim, Fallout, or any other game Easter eggs do you know of that we haven't tackled yet? Leave a comment down below. As always, like ratings are very much appreciated. Again, thanks for stopping by, and hope to catch you all in my next video. Peace out, everyone.